Hello and welcome to the third episode of this the Office build. In today's episode we're going to build a GUI and I'm going to do it in a couple of steps, with the first one being just getting a quote up on the screen and that we can call from the API and that we can see that that works, and then we can worry about animations and the background and stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is inside the Office Frontend project and inside source, we're going to create a components folder. And inside that, we're going to create our first React component. And I'm going to call it line generator.jsx. Now this is going to be the base component, which we're going to call other components from and build our UI from. So this is going to be like the base component for us. So the first thing I want to do here is to import a couple of things, and I'm just going to copy them in here. Now, the first thing we import is the useState from React, and this will allow us to create state variables, which I'm going to explain a little bit about when we define them. Then we import motion and animate presence from FrameMotion, and this is for animating. And then we have two other components which we're going to build after this. So these two you can just import. It's actually not going to be, it's not going to be the one like this. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is that I want to define our API URL, and this we're going to have in a environment environment variable file. And to get it inside the GUI, we need to import it, and it's going to be called white_API_URL. Now we can actually create this directly so we don't forget. So outside source, inside the Office frontend, you can create a file called .env.local. This is going to be the environment file for the GUI, like this. And the only thing we're going to have right now is the API URL. And you need to name it in this convention with white first, because inside the white build, this is what it will look for in the environment variable. So you need to specify white here. And this just points to localhost 4000. Good. Now that we have done that, we can continue on with actually creating the component like this. And now we can define our state variables. So the first one that I want to have is a quote one. And this is a variable that's going to hold the active quote or the Office line. So this is going to hold the text of the quote, of the Office quote. Then we're going to have another state variable for holding the error text that we will display if something goes wrong or if the user doesn't have permission later on. And the last one we're going to need right now is a loading variable. And this is going to be a Boolean, either set to true or false, depending on if the Office line is loading from the API. If we have, if you remember from the last episode, we await the response from the CSV file because it can take a little bit of time to read it. And right now we're going to await the API response. So while we're waiting for that, it will later we will set the text to loading and so forth. So that's what we need there. Now I'm gonna do another function here, which is gonna be called fetch random line. It's gonna be an async function like this. And the first thing we're gonna do is that we're going to set our error variable to null. We're gonna reset it, because if we have set the error to some error text, if there was a problem and then we generate again, we don't want the error text to still be there. We want it to reset. For loading, we're gonna set it to true, because in the beginning, when we're generating a new quote, it should be loading. Then we're gonna have a try catch. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna await a response from our API, like this API URL, which we defined earlier. And we're gonna do /random. So we got localhost 4000 and then /random. Yes. And this is not gonna do anything other than just call the API. Yes. And then we're gonna check if the response is okay, and if it's not, if it doesn't get an okay message, then we're gonna throw an error. Network response was not okay. And if that doesn't happen, like if the response is okay, then we're gonna declare a variable called data here, and we're gonna await the response in JSON format. So here we're gonna get the actual Office line. It's gonna be in the data variable. And then we're gonna set our quote our state variable to be data. So the quote is now going to be the JSON object, and we're going to do a catch, and we can set error to could not fetch a quote. Please try again. Then we're going to set the quote to null, because when there is an error, we don't want the previous quote to still be on the page. We want it to reset. And then we're also going to have a finally, and this will always trigger, and this will trigger when it's done. And then we will set loading to false. So here we basically say that we call the API, and if we get an error or we get a response, when that is finished, when we know what we have gotten and it has shown up on the screen, then we set loading to false. Yes, and then we need one more function, and that is going to be for when we press the generate quote button, and I'm going to call it handle click. It's going to be an async function, and the only thing it's going to do is fetch the random line. So when we press the button, fetch random line is going to trigger. So that is all the thing we need to set up, and now we can actually just return our component. So we're going to return, and the first thing we want is a main element with some tailwind clauses. Now the first one, relative. Then we're going to have the full height of the viewport. We're going to do a flexbox centering, both vertically and horizontally. Then we're going to set the background to be a light gray, and we're going to have some padding, and we're going to have some more padding on smaller screens. So on small screens, we're going to have padding 6, on bigger screens, padding 4. And we're also going to have overflow hidden, and this is mostly for the background, which we're going to have later, because when the content is moving outside the viewport, we don't want the screen to jump around. We want it to be set. So here we have our main function. Element. Now the next thing we need is a header. It's just going to be a regular header, and inside it we're going to do a motion.h1. And you may not be familiar with the motion elements, but it's basically just the same element, but you're able to animate it using frame motion. So it's nothing fancy. It's just a way to tell frame motion that it's an element that it should animate. And now for these durations is in out. This is basically just a very basic animation for easing in and out when the layout changes. So it's just going to look nice on the page. And then we're also going to have some tailwind clauses. We're going to have some different text sizes depending on the size of the screen. And this H1 is going to hold our title text. So we're going to have some bold text, and the text color to be a dark gray. And we're also going to have some margin on the bottom. So that's that. And inside here, we're going to have some title text, the office line generator. After this, the header is finished. And now we're going to add a error element if we have set error to be something, if it's not null. So if error is something, then we're going to create this P element, paragraph element with some red text and some margin on the bottom. And we're going to set a role for this, and this is more for accessibility so that screen readers can also see that it's an important thing that happened. And inside here, we're going to have just the error text like this. And that is basically it. So if the error is something, then we're going to have this error text here in red. Now we also need another div with, again, some clauses, margin bottom, and the minimum height of it will be 6 rem. So it can't get too small on small screens. And then we're also going to have some flex centering and justify center. Yeah, so it's going to center it. Now inside here, we're going to have the animate presence with the mode wait and initial set to false. And we're going to explain this in just a moment. But inside here, we're going to check if the loading boolean is true or not. And if it is true, then we're going to pass in our loading spinner here, which we haven't created yet, but we will do in just a second. So if the loading is set to true, then we're going to have the loading spinner. And if it's set to false, then we're going to have our quote display. So we're going to display our quote or spinning loading thing. Yeah, like this. Sorry, wrong way. Like this, yes. And then animate present motion div. Now, the animate present, it basically handles exit and enter animations when loading switches between a spinner and the quote. So it's going to wait for it to switch. Initially, it's not going to be an animation, but when it switches from the loading to the quote, then it's going to animate it. The next part that we need is a button, which is going to be the generate quote button. And we're going to set on click here for it to do the handle click function that we defined earlier. And we're going to set it to disabled when the loading state variable is true. So when we are loading, we don't want to be able to press the button. So therefore we set it to disabled. And once again, we're going to have some Tailwind clauses here. The full viewport of the width on smaller screens, we're going to have the width set to auto. We're going to have some padding left and right, 1 rem, and also some padding top and bottom of 0.5 rem. Now we also need a background, and we're going to put it to blue, and the text of the bottom should be white, some nice rounded corners, and we're going to have a shadow, a drop shadow, just a subtle one. And on hover, when the user is hovering it, we're going to set the background color to be a little bit darker blue so that you can see some difference when you hover it. And we're going to set that when it is disabled, then the opacity is going to be just 50%. So it's going to fade out a bit when it's disabled and when it is loading, basically. So that is basically it. Now inside this button, we are also going to check if the loading is set to true or false. If it's true, then the text is going to be loading so that the user can see that it's loading and it can't press the button. And when it's false, it will be generate quote. Yeah, so that is basically our whole line generator component for right now. We're going to add a bunch of stuff to it later. Let's see. So we will close it down here, and then we are also going to export it. Okay, so now that we're done with our line generator, we can move on to creating the other components that we need. So we can start by creating the quote display. So inside components, we're going to create a new folder, new file called quote display.jsx. And inside here, we're going to import two things. We're going to import use ref and use effect from the React library. And I'm going to explain them in just a second. And then we're going to export our component, quote display. And it's going to take one parameter, which is going to be our quote. So it takes the quote state variable as a parameter that we had in the line component, line generator component. And then we're going to do a quote ref here, which is going to be a use ref with value of null. And this is going to be a reference that will be attached to the block quote element that we're later going to create here. And when we later call quote ref.current.focus, we will programmatically move focus to that element. And this is important for accessibility because screen readers, users will then know that a new quote has appeared because focus will shift to it. Now the next thing we're going to create is a use effect here, and it looks like this. And here we're going to check if the quote is something, if we have set it to something, and our quote ref is active. Then we're going to set the thing I just said, the focus, to the block quote element that we're going to create in a second here, like this, and that is done. Now we're going to also check if there is no quote, if we didn't pass anything to this. We're just going to return null because we don't want to render a component if we don't need to. But if there is a quote, then we're going to return some elements. So the first element we're going to return is this block quote. Now what a block quote is, it is a semantic HTML element for displaying a quotation. And it tells browsers and screen readers and search engines that the content inside is a quoted piece of text. So now we're going to attach our reference, which is called our quote ref, to this element, class name. And we're going to have some class names here to center the text and remove the default outline like this. And then we're going to have some accessibility attributes. One is area live, which we're going to set to the value of polite. And this will tell screen readers that announce the changes here, but do it politely. So like wait until the user has finished reading the current content, then announce it. Don't just interrupt it and announce it right away. And we're also going to have an aria atomic attribute. And this is going to be set to true. And this ensures that the entire block quote is read as one unit and not in pieces. So it will be together. And then we're going to have a tab index of -1. And this makes the element focusable, but not part of the normal tab order. So we can focus on it using the quote_ref.current.focus, but users don't accidentally tab into it. Now our block quote element is done here, and inside it we're going to have a different of other elements. So we're going to have a paragraph element with some classes. So we're going to have some responsive text sizes depending on the size of the screen. So I'm just going to add these real quick. And the font is going to be italic, and the text color is going to be a dark gray. And we will have some margin on the bottom. And inside this paragraph element, we're going to have the quote.line. So the line is going to be inside here. Now we need the other information as well. Now we're going to create a footer. A footer inside a block quote is semantic HTML for who said the quote. So this is where the author of the quote will be. We're going to have some semi-bold text, and the text is going to be a dark gray and some margin on the bottom. So now that's finished, and inside here we're going to have a site element, like this, and this is going to be the author, so the quote.character is going to be here. The site element is specifically for the source of a quote or citation, so it will here wrap the character's name. Now outside the footer we're going to have another P element, paragraph element, with some classes like this. Now here we're going to have some small text, and the text is going to be a dark gray once again. And inside here we will display the season and the episode number that we get from the quotes, like this and this. And now it's actually done. Okay, so now that we finished with the quote display component, we can move on to the second component that we're going to create now, which is a loading spinner.jsx. Now inside here we're not going to import anything, we're just going to export the component loading spinner like this. And inside here we're just going to return firstly a div with the role of status. So this will tell screen readers that it is a status message. We're going to have area live attribute of polite, which I explained in the last component. And we will have some classes to make it a flexbox and justify its content horizontally and add margin on top and the bottom. And we're also going to have an area label attribute of loading new quote. And this will be read out to screen readers, so even if they can't see the spinner visually, they will hear the text and they will hopefully know what it is. Inside here we're going to have an SVG element, and this is actually going to be the spinner graphic, and we're going to define it with SVG format. So we're going to have an SVG, and we're going to have some classes to it, and animate spin, which is going to continuously spin it or rotate it infinitely. As long as it's on the page, it's going to spin. Then we're going to set it to a fixed height and width of 1.5 rem, which is 24 pixels. And we're going to set its fill color to be blue. Now we're also going to do an XML and S attribute. And this is basically that we declare its namespace, so that browsers know that this is markup is SVG and not HTML. So we're just going to set it to HTTP www.v3.org/2000/SVG. And we're going to fill value of none, and this will make it so that spaces is not filled unless we specify it. And then we will have a view box of 0, 0, 24, 24, and this will define the coordinates of our SVG. So it will start at the top left, and it will be 24 units wide and 24 units tall, like this. And then we're going to have an area hidden set to true, and this will hide it from screen readers since the div already has an area label. We don't need to show this to screen readers. Now inside our SVG we also need some shapes, so we're going to have a circle element for the background, and this is going to have a simple class of just opacity 25, so 25% opacity, so it's going to be a little bit faded out. Then we're going to have some CX value of 12 and CY value of also 12, and this will create a center point at 12, which will be in the middle of the 24 by 24 view box. And we're also going to have a radius of 10 units. So like this, we're going to have a stroke variable to be the current color. And this is going to just use the color that we set earlier, the blue. And then we're going to have a stroke width of 4 units. And this will create a border thickness of 4 units. Now we're going to close it up. Now with the circle done, we also need a path element, and this will be the spinning arc. Now for this, we need also a class, and we're going to set this opacity to be 75%, so it's going to be more visible than the circle. We will fill it with the current color, so like the blue one that we set earlier, and we will have a D value, and I'm just going to copy this in because I don't want to type it. And this will basically be the SVG's path definition, a series of commands telling the SVG how to draw the shape. So you can just copy this in, and we just have to close this element, and then this is done. So here we have our loading spinner ready. So when this is done, everything is ready for us to test it, except actually I was almost about to forget, inside our app.jsx. I've already done this, but you will have to import line generator component and add it inside the app here so that it will actually be displayed on the page.
Okay, so I actually found an error that we need to fix before we can test it. Inside the loading spinner component, I accidentally had these curly brackets when it should just be parentheses. So I'm just going to change that, and now it should be ready. So I want you to navigate to the Frontend folder, and then from there you can run npm run build to build the white project. It's going to take just a moment. And then you can do npm run dev to start the frontend server. Like this, and then you can just navigate to the localhost. And I'm already here, let's see, and here you can see we just have some simple GUI with just the title text and the button. And when we press it, we get our loading spinner, and then we get a quote. So yeah, that was part 1 of the GUI episode. I'm going to do a part 2, which I'm going to release very shortly here. And in that, we're going to focus on the background and some colors and make it look nice. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in episode 2.